Captain Vextar's 6 eyes studied the viewing screen with growing interest. The bridge of the Zalathi warship Dominion's Edge hummed with quiet efficiency as his crew worked at their stations. Outside, the endless void of space stretched in, all directions, broken only by distant stars and the faint glow of nebulae. "Captain," called out Navigation Officer Kethra from her station, "we have detected an unknown vessel at the edge of our scanning range." Vextar turned his massive head toward her. His species, the Zalathi, stood nearly 8 feet tall with thick, armored skin that had evolved on a high-gravity world. 4 powerful arms ended in clawed hands, and their natural armor could stop most small weapons. They had been the dominant military force in this sector of the galaxy for over 3,000 years. "Display it on the main screen," Vexitar ordered. The image that appeared showed a small, oddly shaped vessel drifting slowly through space. It was clearly artificial, but its design was unlike anything in their databases. The ship appeared to be made of simple metal alloys with what looked like primitive chemical thrusters attached to its rear section. "Interesting," muttered Science Officer Zalnex as he studied his readings. "The vessel appears to be from an unknown species. Preliminary scans suggest basic technology levels." Vexitar leaned back in his command chair. As captain of one of the, Confederation's most advanced scout vessels, he had encountered dozens of primitive species over his long career. Most followed a predictable pattern. They would either surrender immediately when faced with superior technology, or make a brief, futile attempt at resistance before being crushed. "Any signs of advanced weapons or shielding?" he asked. "Negative, Captain," Zalnex replied. "The vessel appears to use simple metal hull plating with no energy shields detected. Weapon systems appear to be kinetic-based projectile launchers. Quite primitive." The bridge crew exchanged knowing looks, another easy conquest for the Confederation. Vextar had overseen the subjugation of 17 different species, and this looked like it would be number 18. "Begin a deep scan of the vessel," Vextar commanded. "I want to know everything about this species before we make contact. Their technology level, biological characteristics, population centers, everything." "Yes, Captain," Zalnex said, his fingers dancing across his control panel. "Initiating deep scan now." The Dominion's Edge was equipped with the most advanced scanning technology in the Confederation fleet. Their deep scan arrays could penetrate most known materials and analyze everything from atomic structure to biological functions. It was a tool that had given them a decisive advantage over countless primitive worlds. On the screen, invisible beams of energy reached out toward the unknown vessel. The ship appeared to be completely unaware of their presence, drifting slowly on its current course without any change in speed or direction. "Scan penetration successful," Zalnex reported. "Beginning analysis of the vessel's construction and contents." Vextar watched as data began flowing across the various screens around the bridge. The unknown ship measured roughly 400 meters in length, much smaller than even their lightest combat vessels. Its hull appeared to be made of steel alloys with some kind of ceramic coating, clearly primitive materials compared to their own crystalline metal composite armor. Initial biological scans show the presence of approximately 200 life forms aboard the vessel, Zalnex continued. The beings appear to be bipedal, averaging about 1.8 meters in height, much smaller than our species. Communications Officer Veltar looked up from her station. "Captain, should I prepare first contact? Protocols?" "Not yet," Vextar replied. "Let's learn more about what we're dealing with first." The deep scan continued, revealing more details about the mysterious vessel and its occupants. The beings inside appeared to be carbon-based life forms, similar to many species they had encountered before. They seemed to breathe a nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere and showed signs of being warm-blooded mammals. "Fascinating," Zalnex muttered as he studied the incoming data. These creatures appear to have originated from a world with relatively low gravity and a thin atmosphere. Their bone density is much lower than ours, and their muscle mass suggests they would be quite weak in a physical confrontation. Vextar nodded approvingly. Physical weakness was common among primitive species. Most had evolved on easier worlds, and never developed the natural strength and armor that came from surviving on harsh planets like the Zalathi homeworld. "What about their technology?" he asked. "Primitive, but functional," Zalnex replied. "They appear to use chemical combustion for propulsion, basic electronics for ship systems, and kinetic projectile weapons for armament. I would estimate their technology level at approximately level 2.3 on our scale. Level 2.3 was barely above stone tools. The Zalathi considered themselves to be at level 8.7, with theoretical level 10 representing perfect mastery of physical laws. A species at level 2.3 would pose no threat whatsoever to their advanced fleet." "Excellent," Vextar said with satisfaction. "Continue the deep scan. I want complete biological and technological profiles before we proceed." The scanning beams penetrated deeper into the unknown vessel, analyzing its internal structure and systems. The ship appeared to be divided into multiple sections, with what looked like living quarters, work areas, and some kind of command center. The beings inside appear to follow a hierarchical social structure, Zalnex observed. There are clear distinctions in their quarters and duties. Some appear to be leaders, while others are clearly subordinates. Standard for most primitive species, Vextar noted. They probably still organize themselves along tribal lines. "Captain," Veltar called out from the communications station, "I'm detecting radio emissions from the vessel. They appear to be using electromagnetic communications. Can you decode their transmissions?" "Working on it now, sir. Their communication patterns are relatively simple. I should have a basic translation matrix ready within a few minutes." Vextar smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Everything was proceeding exactly as expected. Another primitive species, another easy victory for the Confederation. Soon, this new race would join the dozens of others working in their factories and mines, grateful for the privilege of serving their Zalathi masters. "Sir," Zalnex said, looking up from his console with some confusion, "I'm detecting some unusual readings from their computer systems." "What kind of unusual readings?" "Well, their data storage systems are quite primitive, but they seem to contain an enormous amount of information. Far more than would be expected for a vessel of this size and technology level." Vextar frowned. "What kind of information?" "I'm still analyzing, but it appears to be historical records, technical manuals, and what look like tactical databases." "Tactical databases?" Vextar repeated. "You mean military information?" "Yes, sir. Extensive military information. Records of battles, weapon specifications, strategic planning documents. The amount of data is quite remarkable for such a primitive species." This was unusual. Most primitive species they encountered had little in the way of organized military knowledge. They might have basic warriors or hunters, but detailed tactical databases suggested a more sophisticated understanding of warfare than their technology level indicated. "Continue the analysis," Vextar ordered. "I want to know more about these military records." As the deep scan progressed, more details emerged about the mysterious vessel and its occupants. The beings inside appeared to live in a highly organized society with complex social structures. Their technology might be primitive, but their social organization seemed surprisingly advanced. "Captain," Veltar announced, "I've completed the initial translation matrix. I can now understand their basic communications." "What are they saying?" "Most of it appears to be routine operational communications. Status reports, duty assignments, technical discussions, nothing that suggests they've detected our presence." "Good. What about their language structure?" "Surprisingly complex, sir. They appear to have a highly developed communication system with multiple layers of meaning, much more sophisticated than we would expect from a level 2.3 species." Vexatar's Frown deepened. Nothing about this contact was following the usual pattern. Primitive species typically had simple languages, basic social structures, and minimal military organization. These beings seemed to have advanced versions of all three while maintaining primitive technology. "Sir," Zalnex called out urgently, "you need to see this." "What is it?" "I've been analyzing their historical records. Captain, these beings have been engaged in almost constant warfare for their entire recorded history." "Warfare with other species?" "No, sir. Warfare with each other. According to these records, they've been fighting among themselves for thousands of years." Vextar moved to stand behind Zalnex's station, studying the data flowing across the screen. What he saw was disturbing, page after page of military records, battle reports, and casualty figures. This species seemed to spend more time fighting than most civilizations spent on anything else. "How many conflicts are we talking about?" he asked. "Thousands, sir. Major wars, minor conflicts, brief skirmishes. They seem to fight constantly. And the scale of some of these battles—" Zalnex paused, rechecking his readings. "Sir, some of these conflicts involved millions of casualties." "Millions?" Vextar couldn't hide his surprise. "That can't be right. Check your translation matrix." "I've checked it 3 times, sir. The numbers are correct. They've fought wars that killed millions of their own kind." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. A species that could wage war on such a massive scale against itself was unprecedented. Most primitive species might have small tribal conflicts, but nothing approaching the scale Zalnex was describing. "What kinds of weapons were they using?" Vextar asked quietly. "That's the disturbing part, sir. Even with their primitive technology, they've developed incredibly efficient methods of killing. Chemical weapons, biological agents, explosive devices, kinetic bombardment. They seem to have turned warfare into a science." Vexatar stared at the data streaming across the screen. Each entry represented thousands or millions of deaths, and there were thousands of entries. This single species had killed more of their own kind than the Zalathi had killed in all their conquest campaigns combined. "Captain," Veltar called out nervously, "I'm detecting some changes in their communications patterns." "What kind of changes?" "They appear to be running some kind of system checks, testing their sensors and weapon systems." Vextar's blood ran cold. "Do they know we're here?" "I don't think so, sir. It appears to be routine maintenance, but..." "But what?" "Sir, their weapon systems are more advanced than we initially thought. The scan shows they're not just simple kinetic projectiles. They have guided missiles, energy-based point defense systems, and what appears to be some kind of magnetic acceleration technology." The pieces were starting to come together, and Vextar didn't like the picture they were forming. This wasn't just another primitive species. These beings had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of warfare, and their technology, while primitive by Confederation standards, was specifically designed for one purpose: killing as efficiently as possible. "Sir," Zalnex said quietly, "there's something else. I've been analyzing their ship's designation and purpose." "What about it?" "According to their records, this vessel is classified as a light patrol ship. It's not even considered a warship by their standards." The bridge fell completely silent. If this was just a patrol ship, what did their actual warships look like? "Captain," Veltar whispered, "should we abort the contact mission?" Vextar stared at the small vessel on the screen. It looked so harmless, drifting through space with its primitive metal hull and simple chemical thrusters. But the data they had gathered painted a very different picture. These weren't primitive savages waiting to be conquered. These were apex, predators who had spent millennia learning how to kill more efficiently. "Continue the deep scan," he ordered finally. "I need to know everything about this species before we make any decisions." The unknown vessel continued its slow drift through space, apparently unaware of the Zalathi ship studying it. But Captain Vextar was beginning to suspect that appearances could be very deceiving when it came to this strange new species. The deep scan of the human vessel had been running for 2 hours now. Captain Vextar remained on the bridge, unwilling to leave while such disturbing information continued to flow from their analysis systems. What had started as a routine first contact mission was becoming something much more complicated. "Captain," Science Officer Zalnex called out, his voice carrying a note of concern. "The deeper we scan, the more unusual this becomes." "What have you found now?" Vextar asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "I've been analyzing their computer databases more thoroughly. Sir, these beings don't just fight wars, they study warfare. They have detailed analyses of every conflict they've ever been involved in, going back thousands of years." Vextar moved to look over Zalnex's shoulder at the data flowing across his screen. What he saw made his stomach turn. Page after page of tactical analysis, strategic planning, and detailed studies of how to kill more efficiently. "Look at this," Zalnex pointed to a section of data. "This appears to be an analysis of a battle where they surrounded and destroyed an enemy force. But instead of just recording the victory, they've studied every aspect of the engagement. What worked, what didn't work, how they could do it better next time. That's..." Vextar paused, trying to find the right words. "That's remarkably sophisticated for a primitive species." "It gets worse, sir. They don't just study their victories. They study their defeats even more carefully. Look at this record here. They lost a major battle, suffered heavy casualties, but instead of mourning their dead and moving on, they analyzed exactly why they lost and developed new tactics to prevent it from happening again. The implications were chilling. Most species, when faced with defeat, would either surrender or flee. These humans seemed to treat defeat as a learning opportunity, a chance to become better at warfare." "What about their current military situation?" Vextar asked. "Are they currently at war?" "Not exactly, sir. But that might be even more disturbing." "Explain." "According to their records, they've achieved something called planetary unity relatively recently. All the major factions on their homeworld have stopped fighting each other and formed a single government. That's good news, isn't it?" "You would think so, sir. But look at what they've been doing since achieving peace." Zalnex pulled up another section of data. "They've taken all their military knowledge and experience and created something they call joint forces. Instead of having separate armies that fight each other, they've combined all their military expertise into a single unified force." Vextar felt a chill run down his spine. "You mean they've taken thousands of years of warfare experience and combined it all into one military organization?" "Exactly, sir. And they've been using their peacetime to develop new weapons and tactics. Look at these training exercises they conduct. They simulate massive battles involving millions of soldiers, testing new strategies and weapon systems." The data showed elaborate war games where human forces practiced fighting enemies with superior technology. They ran scenarios where they were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing impossible odds. And in many cases, they found ways to win anyway. "Sir," Communications Officer Veltar interrupted. "I've been monitoring their internal communications more closely. There's something you need to hear." "What is it?" "They're discussing something called first contact protocols. They appear to have detailed plans for what to do if they encounter alien species." Vextar's blood ran cold. "They have first contact protocols? How could a primitive species have developed those?" "I don't know, sir. But listening to their discussions, they seem to have considered multiple scenarios. Peaceful contact, hostile contact, technologically superior aliens, technologically inferior aliens. They've thought through dozens of different possibilities. Play me a sample of their communications." Veltar adjusted her controls, and the bridge was filled with sounds of the human language. Even through the translation matrix, Vextar could hear the calm, professional tone of the voices. Navigation reports all systems normal, sensor array operating at full efficiency. Weapons systems on standby, ready for immediate activation if needed. Copy that. Tactical, what's our current readiness status? All weapon systems checked and ready. Point defense grid is online. Missile tubes loaded and ready to fire on command. We can go from standby to full combat readiness in 37 seconds. Good. Keep monitoring all sensor readings. If anything unusual shows up, I want to know about it immediately. The communications ended, and the bridge fell silent. 37 seconds from standby to full combat readiness. That was faster than most Zalathi warships could manage. Captain, Zalnek said quietly, I don't think this is a peaceful exploration vessel. What do you mean? Look at the crew composition. I've been analyzing the biological scans of the individuals aboard that ship. Every single one of them shows signs of extensive physical training. These aren't scientists or explorers. These are soldiers. Vextar studied the biological data. The humans aboard the vessel showed muscle development consistent with intensive physical conditioning. Their bone density was higher than normal for their species, suggesting they regularly engaged in high-stress activities. Most telling of all, their brain scans showed neural patterns consistent with extensive combat training. They're all warriors, Vextar breathed. Every single one, sir, and not just basic warriors. Look at their psychological profiles. The data was disturbing. Each human on the vessel showed psychological conditioning designed to handle extreme stress, violence, and life-threatening situations. They had been trained to remain calm and functional, even when facing death. Sir, Veltar called out urgently, their communications are changing. They're starting to use what appears to be coded language. Can you decode it? Working on it, sir, but it's quite sophisticated. They appear to be switching to military. Communication protocols! Vexitar felt sweat beginning to form on his armored skin. Military communication protocols meant they suspected something was wrong. But how could they know about the Zalathi presence? Zalnex, could they have detected our scans? Impossible, sir. Our scanning technology is completely passive. There's no way a level 2.3 species could detect it. Then why are they switching to military protocols? Before anyone could answer, Veltar spoke up again. Sir, I've partially decoded their new communications. They're conducting what they call a stealth sweep. A what? They're using their sensors to scan for what they call unusual energy signatures and passive scanning attempts. Sir, I think they know we're here. The bridge erupted in nervous chatter as the crew began to grasp the implications. A primitive species had somehow detected their advanced scanning systems and was now actively looking for them. How is that possible? Vextar demanded. I don't know, sir, Zalnex replied, frantically checking his instruments. According to everything we know about their technology level, they shouldn't be able to detect our presence. Unless, Veltar said quietly, their technology level isn't what we think it is. What do you mean? Sir? I've been analyzing their equipment more carefully. Yes, they use chemical propulsion and metal hull construction. But look at how they use these primitive technologies. Veltar transferred her analysis to the main screen. What appeared showed technical specifications that were remarkably sophisticated, despite being based on primitive materials. Their chemical propulsion system is incredibly efficient. She continued. They've squeezed every possible bit of performance out of basic physics, and their metal hull construction uses layered armor techniques that I've never seen before. It's like, Zalnex added, studying the data, they've taken primitive technology and refined it to absolute perfection. But why would they do that? Vextar asked. Why not develop more advanced technology? Maybe they did, sir, Veltar said quietly. Maybe this is just what they use for their patrol ships. The implications hit everyone at once. If this was the technology they used for routine patrols, what did their actual military vessels look like? Captain, the navigation officer called out, the alien vessel is changing course. All eyes turned to the main screen. The human ship, which had been drifting slowly on a steady course, was now turning. Its movement was slow and deliberate. like a predator that had caught the scent of prey. "They're turning toward us," navigation reported unnecessarily. "How can they know where we are?" Vextar demanded. "We're completely cloaked." "Sir," Zalnex said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I don't think our cloak is as effective as we thought it was." "What?" "I've been analyzing the data from their sensors. They're not using the kind of active scanning we expected. They're using passive detection methods that I don't fully understand. It's like they're looking for shadows in space, disruptions in background radiation, gravity fluctuations." "That's impossible. That would require incredibly sophisticated detection algorithms." "Yes, sir, it would. The kind of algorithms that a species would develop if they'd spent thousands of years fighting wars where the ability to detect hidden enemies meant the difference between life and death." The human vessel continued its slow turn until it was facing directly toward the Zalathi ship. Even though they were still too far away to see each other visually, there was no doubt that the humans knew exactly where the Dominion's edge was located. "Captain," Veltar reported, her voice shaking slightly, "I'm detecting changes in their weapon systems. They're powering up." "All weapons?" "No, sir. Just their defensive systems. Point defense grids, anti-missile systems, close-range weapons. It's like they're preparing for us to attack them." Vexitar stared at the screen showing the human vessel. It looked so small and primitive compared to his massive warship. But everything they had learned suggested that appearances were deceiving when it came to this species. "Sir," Zalnex said urgently, "I'm detecting massive energy spikes from their computer systems. They're running what appears to be combat simulations." "Combat simulations?" "Yes, sir. They're running dozens of scenarios simultaneously. Different attack patterns, various enemy ship configurations, multiple tactical responses. It's like they're preparing for every possible way we might attack them." "How long have they been running these simulations?" "According to the data, sir. They started the moment they detected our presence." The bridge fell silent as the crew absorbed this information. While the Zalathi had been studying the humans had been studying them right back. And more importantly, they had been preparing to fight. "Captain," Veltar whispered, "what are your orders?" Vextar stared at the human vessel on the screen. Everything about this first contact had gone wrong. What should have been a simple encounter with a primitive species had turned into a potential military engagement with unknown opponents who seemed to know far more about warfare than their technology level suggested. "Continue monitoring their communications," he ordered finally, "and prepare our own weapons systems for defensive action only." "Sir," his weapons officer called out, "shouldn't we power up our offensive systems as well?" Vextar considered this for a moment. Standard doctrine called for overwhelming force when dealing with primitive species, but nothing about this situation was standard. "No," he decided, "defensive systems only. I have a feeling that if we power up our offensive weapons, they'll take it as a sign that we're planning to attack." "And if they attack us first, sir?" Vextar looked at the data they had gathered. A species that had spent thousands of years perfecting warfare, who treated defeat as a learning opportunity, who had trained every member of their military to remain calm under extreme stress. "Then," he said quietly, "we'll find out just how good we really are." Captain Vextar ordered his science team to work around the clock analyzing the human vessel. What they discovered over the next several hours shattered everything the Zalathi thought they knew about primitive species. "Captain," Zalnex called out, his voice strained from hours of continuous work, "I've completed the analysis of their tactical databases." "Sir, what I've found is beyond anything we've encountered before." "Show me," Vextar said, though he dreaded what he might learn. The main screen filled with human military data. Charts, graphs, battle plans, weapon specifications, and tactical analyses covered every available pixel of space. "The humans don't just fight wars, sir. They study warfare like we study science. Look at this section here. They call it asymmetric warfare." What does that mean? It means fighting enemies who are stronger than you are. They have detailed strategies for defeating superior forces using inferior technology. They've developed dozens of different approaches: guerrilla tactics, resource denial, psychological warfare, strategic deception. Vextar studied the data with growing unease. Page after page of strategies designed specifically for defeating technologically superior enemies. It was as if the humans had been preparing for this exact situation. "This can't be right," he muttered. "These tactics assume fighting enemies with better weapons, better armor, better technology. How could they develop such strategies?" "That's the disturbing part, sir. According to their historical records, they developed these tactics fighting each other. Some of their nations or tribes would have better technology than others, so the weaker groups learned how to compensate." "You mean they've been practicing fighting superior forces for thousands of years?" "Exactly, sir. And they got very good at it. Look at these battle records. Time after time, technologically inferior human forces defeated superior ones using these tactics. The implications were staggering. While the Zalathi had dominated their sector by relying on superior technology and overwhelming force, the humans had spent millennia learning how to fight enemies who were stronger than they were. "What about their weapons development?" Vexitar asked. "That's even more disturbing, sir. They don't just develop weapons to fight their current enemies. They develop weapons to fight potential future enemies." Zal next brought up another section of data showing human weapon development over time. The progression was methodical and relentless. "Look at this pattern, sir. Every time they encounter a new type of defense, they develop weapons specifically, designed to counter it. Energy shields lead to kinetic penetrators. Kinetic armor leads to energy weapons. Electronic countermeasures lead to hardened electronics." "They adapt," Vextar said quietly. "More than that, sir. They anticipate. Look at these weapon systems they've developed but never used. They've created weapons for enemies they haven't even met yet." The data showed research into exotic weapons designed to counter theoretical defenses. Weapons that could bypass energy shields, penetrate any known armor, or disrupt technological systems. The humans had imagined dozens of different types of alien technology and developed counters for each one. "Captain," Veltar interrupted from the communications station, "I've been monitoring their internal discussions more closely. They're talking about something called escalation doctrine." "What is that?" "From what I can understand, it's their policy for dealing with superior enemies. If they can't match an enemy's technology, they escalate the conflict in other ways." "Explain." "They increase the scale of the fighting, bring in more forces, target civilian populations, use chemical or biological weapons, destroy infrastructure. Basically, they make the cost of victory so high that their enemies give up." Vextar felt a chill run through his body. "They would attack civilian targets?" "According to their records, sir, they've done it before. Many times. When facing superior enemies, they target supply lines, manufacturing centers, population centers, anything that supports the enemy war effort." "That's..." Vextar struggled to find words. "That's barbaric." "Perhaps, sir. But it's also effective. Their records show multiple conflicts where technologically superior forces withdrew rather than pay the price for total victory." The bridge fell silent as the crew absorbed this information. The Zalathi code of warfare emphasized honor, direct confrontation, and minimal civilian casualties. The idea of deliberately targeting non-combatants was repugnant to their warrior culture. "Sir," Zalnek said quietly, "there's more. I've been analyzing their current military organization." "Go ahead." "They've structured their forces around something they call distributed command. Instead of having a central command that controls everything, they've created multiple independent units that can operate on their own." "Why would they do that?" "So that destroying their command structure doesn't stop their military from functioning. Even if we eliminated their leadership, their individual units would continue fighting independently." The tactical implications were disturbing. Zalathi military doctrine relied heavily on command hierarchies. Eliminate the leadership, and the entire force would collapse. The humans had apparently learned from this weakness and designed their military to function without central control. What about their ship design? Vextar asked. We classified it as a primitive patrol vessel. That classification may have been premature, sir. I've been studying their engineering more carefully. Zalnex brought up detailed schematics of the human vessel. What had initially appeared to be simple construction now revealed layers of sophisticated engineering. Their hull design uses something called layered defense, multiple types of armor designed to defeat different kinds of weapons. The outer layer is designed to disperse energy weapons. The middle layer stops kinetic projectiles. The inner layer protects against radiation and biological weapons. 3 different armor types on one ship? Yes, sir. And that's just the passive defenses. They also have active countermeasures, electronic warfare systems, and what appears to be some kind of adaptive shielding. Adaptive shielding? Their shields can change configuration depending on the type of attack they're facing. Energy weapons trigger one response, kinetic weapons trigger another, and so on. Vextar stared at the technical specifications. This wasn't primitive technology. This was technology specifically designed by a species that expected to fight enemies with superior capabilities. Captain, the navigation officer called out, the human vessel is moving again. On the main screen, the human ship was beginning a slow, complex maneuver. It wasn't moving directly toward or away from the Zalathi vessel, but instead following a curved path that kept changing direction. What are they doing? Vexatar asked. Unknown, sir, navigation replied. But their movement pattern doesn't match any standard navigation we're familiar with. Sir, Veltar added from communications. I'm detecting increased activity in their computer systems. They appear to be running more combat simulations. What kind of simulations? Multiple attack scenarios, sir, but also escape routes, evasive maneuvers, and what appears to be some kind of tactical withdrawal patterns. Vextar watched the human ship's erratic movement with growing understanding. They're not just running simulations, they're implementing them. Sir? Look at their movement pattern. They're testing different evasive maneuvers while simultaneously planning multiple response scenarios. They're preparing for any possible action we might take. Captain, Zalnex said urgently, I'm detecting energy buildups in their weapon systems, but it's not what we expected. What do you mean? They're not powering up their main weapons, sir. They're charging their point defense systems and what appears to be some kind of electronic warfare equipment. Electronic warfare? Systems, designed to disrupt enemy sensors, communications, and targeting systems. If they activate these systems, we could lose our ability to scan them or coordinate our own weapons. The tactical situation was becoming more complex by the minute. The humans weren't preparing for a direct confrontation. They were preparing to neutralize the Zalathi's technological advantages while positioning themselves to escape or counterattack. Sir, Veltar reported, I'm detecting changes in their communication patterns again. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies simultaneously. Are they trying to communicate with us? I don't think so, sir. It appears to be some kind of automated system. They're transmitting data packets on dozens of different frequencies using various protocols. What kind of data? I'm not sure, sir. The transmission is heavily encrypted, but the volume of data suggests they're sending detailed information about our vessel, our weapons, our current position. Sending it where? Veltar's face went pale. I think they're sending it to other human ships, sir. The bridge fell completely silent. If the humans were reporting their encounter to other vessels, this was no longer an isolated first contact situation. Other human ships would know about the Zalathi presence, their capabilities, and their current location. How many other ships might be out there? Vextar asked quietly. Unknown, sir, Zalnex replied. But if this vessel is truly just a light patrol ship, as their records indicate, there could be much larger vessels nearby. And now they know exactly where we are and what we're capable of. Yes, sir, and based on their tactical doctrines, they're probably already planning how to defeat us. Vextar studied the human ship on the screen. It was still performing its complex evasive maneuvers, while simultaneously broadcasting data about the Zalathi vessel to unknown recipients. Everything about the situation suggested a level of tactical sophistication that far exceeded what their technology level indicated. "Captain," his weapons officer called out, "request permission to charge our main weapons systems." "Denied," Vextar replied immediately. "Sir, if we charge our weapons, they'll detect it immediately. Based on their tactical doctrines, they'll interpret that as a prelude to attack and respond accordingly." "How would they respond, sir?" Vextar looked at the data they had gathered about human military doctrine, a species that viewed warfare as science, that specialized in fighting superior enemies, that would escalate conflicts to any level necessary to achieve victory. "They would ensure that we couldn't attack them," he said finally, "either by disabling our weapons systems, destroying our ship, or calling in reinforcements to overwhelm us. And we don't know which option they would choose?" "No," Vextar admitted, "but based on everything we've learned about them, they've probably prepared for all three possibilities." The human vessel continued its evasive maneuvers, broadcasting data and running combat simulations. A species that had turned warfare into art, science, and philosophy all rolled into one. A species that had spent thousands of years learning how to defeat enemies, exactly like the Zalathi. "Sir," Zalnek said quietly, "what are your orders?" Vexatar stared at the screen for a long moment. Everything about this encounter had exceeded their expectations and challenged their assumptions. They had come looking for primitive prey and found apex predators instead. "Continue monitoring," he ordered, "and prepare for the possibility that we may need to withdraw." "Withdraw, sir?" his weapons officer asked in surprise. "From a single primitive vessel?" Vextar turned to look at his weapons officer. "That's no primitive vessel. That's a warship crewed by a species that has been preparing for this moment for thousands of years." Aboard the UHSF Indomitable, Captain Sarah Chen stood calmly on the bridge, watching her crew work with practiced efficiency. The bridge was smaller than the Zalathi Command Center, designed for functionality rather than displays of power. Every surface served a purpose. Every system was built for reliability under extreme conditions. "Contact bearing 127 Mark 15, range approximately 50,000 kilometers. Reported Lieutenant Commander Torres from the sensor station. "Profile matches theoretical alien vessel configuration. Estimated mass 2.3 million tons. Energy signature consistent with advanced fusion power systems." "Thank you, Torres," Chen replied calmly. Her voice carried the quiet authority that came from 20 years in the human defense fleet. "Time since initial detection?" 2 hours, 14 minutes, Captain, and they still don't know we've spotted them?" "Negative, Captain. They're maintaining their scanning pattern and position. No evasive maneuvers or changes in energy output." Chen nodded. The aliens had made their first mistake by assuming their scanning technology was undetectable. Humanity had learned long ago that in warfare, the side that saw first usually won. Every human ship carried passive sensor arrays specifically designed to detect scanning attempts no matter how sophisticated. "Lieutenant Hayes," she called to the communications officer. "Signal status?" "Data packet transmitted successfully, Captain. Fleet Command, Titan Station, and all ships within 50 light years have been notified of the contact. We're receiving acknowledgement signals now. Response time estimates? Fast response squadron from Titan Station can be here in 6 hours. Full battle group in 18 hours if needed." Chen allowed herself a small smile. 6 hours was cutting it close. But the Indomitable was designed to handle situations exactly like this one. Every human ship was built on the assumption that it might need to fight alone against superior forces until help arrived. "Tactical analysis, Commander Park?" Executive Officer Commander Park looked up from his console where he'd been running. "Combat simulations for the past hour." The alien vessel significantly outmasses us, Captain. Estimated weapons and shielding capabilities are approximately 3 times our level. In a direct confrontation, our survival chances are less than 15%. And in an indirect confrontation? Much better, Captain. Their scanning patterns suggest they're not familiar with human military doctrine. They appear to be conducting a standard first contact scan, looking for technology levels and biological data, which tells us what about their intentions. They're treating us as a potential conquest target, Captain. Their positioning and scanning protocols match theoretical patterns for species that subjugate primitive civilizations. Chen nodded grimly. It was what they had expected, but hoped to avoid. Humanity's expansion into space had been driven partly by the knowledge that the galaxy was a dangerous place. Every human military officer had studied the theoretical possibility of encountering hostile aliens with superior technology. Weapon status, Lieutenant Patel? All systems nominal, Captain. Point defense grid online and calibrated for unknown energy weapon configurations. Missile tubes loaded with adaptive warheads. Railguns charged and targeted. Electronic warfare suite ready for deployment. Countermeasure status? All systems. Ready, Captain. Decoy drones prepared for launch. Chaff dispensers loaded. Electronic jammers calibrated for multiple frequency ranges. Stealth coding is active and functioning normally. Chen walked to the main viewing screen, studying the tactical display that showed both ships' positions. The alien vessel was maintaining a fixed position, continuing its deep scans while apparently unaware it had been detected. Analysis of their scanning technology, Torres? Very sophisticated, Captain. Much more advanced than ours. But it appears to be primarily focused on passive analysis. They're reading our hull composition, internal structure, biological signatures, and computer systems. Computer systems? Yes, Captain. They've penetrated our outer data networks. However, all classified information is stored in isolated systems as per security protocols. They're only accessing publicly available databases, which includes historical records, technical manuals for older systems, basic tactical doctrines, and general information about human civilization. Chen frowned. They're learning about our military history? Yes, Captain. All publicly available information about human conflicts, weapon development, and tactical evolution. Commander Park, assessment? Park pulled up his analysis on the main screen. Captain, if they're studying our military history, they're about to get a very different picture of humanity than their initial scans suggested. Explain. Their biological scans would have told them we're physically weaker than most species, relatively short-lived, and from a low-gravity world. Standard xenobiology would classify us as non-threatening, but our military history shows something very different. Exactly, Captain. Any species that studies human warfare is going to discover that we've been fighting continuously for our entire recorded history. Not just external enemies, but each other. And we've gotten very good at it. Chen nodded. Human military history was a double-edged sword in first contact situations. It would quickly disabuse aliens of any notion that humans were easy prey, but it might also mark humanity as a threat to be eliminated. Captain, Torres called out urgently, I'm detecting changes in the alien vessel's behavior. They're adjusting their scanning parameters and increasing power output. They're taking a closer look at our data? Yes, Captain. And their energy. Patterns suggest increased activity on their bridge. I think they're starting to understand what they're looking at. Chen moved to the tactical station and studied the readouts. The alien ship's scanning intensity had increased dramatically, and their power systems showed signs of increased activity. They were definitely paying more attention to the human vessel than they had been initially. Time to make a decision, she said quietly. Commander Park, initiate first contact protocols. Option 3. Option 3. Aye, Captain. Option 3 was the protocol for potentially hostile first contact with technologically superior aliens. It was designed to demonstrate human capabilities without immediately escalating to combat. More importantly, it was designed to make aliens think twice about their assumptions. "All stations, prepare for tactical demonstration," Park announced. "Execute on my mark." Chen watched the readouts carefully. In 5 seconds, the Indomitable would reveal that it was much more than the primitive vessel the aliens thought they were scanning. Mark. The change was immediate and dramatic. The Indomitable's stealth systems deactivated, revealing its true energy signature. Point defense systems powered up, weapons came online, and the ship's electronic warfare suite began active scanning of the alien vessel. "Full active sensor sweep initiated," Torres reported. "We're scanning them now, Captain. Their hull composition, internal structure, weapons capabilities, everything. Jamming their communications and sensors," added Hayes. "They're now as blind as we want them to be." "Weapons locked on target," Patel confirmed. "Railguns targeted. On their bridge, missile tubes targeted on their power systems, and point defense calibrated to intercept their weapons." Chen studied the tactical display with satisfaction. In 30 seconds, the Indomitable had gone from appearing to be a helpless target to demonstrating that it was a very dangerous opponent. "Analysis of their vessel, Torres." "Advanced technology as expected, Captain, but with some interesting weaknesses. Their armor is designed primarily to stop energy weapons. Our kinetic weapons should be quite effective. Their shields appear to be single-frequency, not adaptive. And their weapons are primarily energy-based with limited kinetic options." "Tactical assessment, Commander Park?" "They're designed to fight enemies with similar technology, Captain. Energy weapons, energy shields, predictable tactics. They're not prepared for our hybrid approach." "Which is?" "Kinetic weapons to penetrate their shields, adaptive countermeasures to neutralize their advantages, and tactical doctrines they won't expect." Chen nodded. This was exactly the scenario human military doctrine had been designed for. Superior alien technology countered by human adaptability and unconventional thinking. "Captain," Hayes called out, "I'm detecting communication attempts from the alien vessel. They're trying to establish contact. Can you understand them?" "Working on it, Captain. Their language structure is complex, but our translation algorithms are making progress. I should have basic communication capability in a few minutes." "What's the tone of their transmissions?" "Difficult to say without full translation, Captain, but the frequency and urgency suggest surprise and concern. I don't think they expected us to respond this way." Chen allowed herself a small smile. Few species expected humans to respond the way they did to threats. Most species either submitted immediately or fought back using predictable tactics. Humans had developed a third option: demonstrate that they were much more dangerous than they appeared. "Captain," Torres reported, "the alien vessel is backing away from us. Slowly, but they're definitely increasing distance." "Defensive posture?" "Unknown, Captain. Their weapons are powering up, but they haven't targeted us yet. It looks like they're preparing for multiple possibilities." "Smart of them," Chen said, approvingly. "Commander Park, what's our next move?" "Standard protocol calls for demonstrating our communications capability, Captain. Show them we can understand their transmissions and respond appropriately. And if they respond aggressively, then we show them why that would be a mistake." Chen studied the tactical situation. The alien ship was larger, more powerful, and more advanced than the Indomitable. But it was also alone, far from support, and facing an enemy that didn't follow their expectations. More importantly, human reinforcements were on the way. "Captain," Hayes announced, "translation matrix complete. I can now understand their communications." "What are they saying?" "They're debating their options, Captain. Some want to withdraw, others want to demand our surrender, and at least one voice is arguing for immediate attack." "And their decision?" "Still unknown, Captain. But their tone suggests they're beginning to understand that this isn't a routine first contact situation." Chen nodded. The next few minutes would determine whether this encounter ended in peaceful communication or violent confrontation. But either way, the aliens now knew that humanity wasn't the easy target they had expected. All stations maintain readiness, she ordered, and prepare for whatever comes next. The two ships faced each other across the void of space, one massive and powerful, the other smaller but surprisingly dangerous, both crews waiting to see what the other would do next, and both beginning to understand that this first contact would be remembered for a very long time. The standoff lasted for 17 minutes. Captain Vextar stared at the human vessel on his screen, no longer seeing a primitive patrol ship, but recognizing it for what it truly was. A warship crewed by apex predators who had just demonstrated that they were far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. "Captain," Communications Officer Veltar said quietly, "we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel. They're using our own communication protocols." "They've learned our language?" Vextar asked, though he was no longer surprised by anything these humans could do. "More than that, sir. They're speaking perfect High Zalathi, using proper military terminology and diplomatic formalities. It's like they've been studying our communications for years." "Play the message." The bridge speakers filled with a calm, measured voice speaking. Flawless High Zalathi with only the slightest accent. "Greetings, Captain Vextar of the Zalathi vessel Dominion's Edge. I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Human Star Forces vessel Indomitable. We have been monitoring your presence for the past 2 hours and 27 minutes. We wish to establish peaceful communication and avoid any misunderstandings that might lead to unnecessary conflict." The bridge fell silent. The human captain had not only learned their language in a matter of minutes, but she knew the name of their ship and their captain. Most disturbing of all, she had been aware of their presence from the very beginning. "How did they—" Vextar began, then stopped. It didn't matter how they had done it. What mattered was that they had. "Should I respond, Captain?" Veltar asked. "Yes," Vextar decided. "Open a channel." The main screen shifted to show the interior of the human bridge. Captain Chen stood calmly in the center, surrounded by her crew who worked with quiet efficiency at their stations. She was smaller than any Zalathi, appearing almost fragile by their standards, but her eyes held the steady gaze of someone who had faced death and come through stronger. "Captain Vextar," she said with a slight nod of respect. "Thank you for responding. I trust you've had time to review the information your scans have gathered about my species." "We have," Vextar replied carefully, "and I admit the data has been educational." "I imagine it has. Your scanning technology is quite impressive, much more advanced than ours. However, I should point out that what you've scanned represents only publicly available information about human civilization, meaning that our actual military capabilities are significantly more extensive than what your scans would indicate. The Indomitable is indeed a light patrol vessel, as your analysis correctly determined. However, our definition of light patrol vessel may differ somewhat from yours." Vextar looked at the data they had gathered. If this was a light patrol vessel, what did human heavy warships look like, Captain Chen? He said formally. "Are you threatening us?" "Not at all, Captain. I'm simply ensuring that we both have accurate information before we proceed. Your initial scans classified my species as primitive and potentially hostile. I wanted to correct that assessment." "And how would you classify your species, Captain?" Chen was quiet for a moment, seemingly considering her words carefully. "Cautious, Captain Vextar. We've learned from experience that the galaxy can be a dangerous place for unprepared species." "Experience?" "We've encountered hostile aliens before, Captain. Not in person, but we've found evidence of species that didn't survive their first contact with technologically superior civilizations. We've studied those encounters carefully and prepared accordingly. The implications were chilling. Humanity had found evidence of species that had been exterminated by aliens and had used that knowledge to prepare for their own eventual first contact." "Captain," Vextar said slowly, "what are your intentions regarding the Zalathi Confederation?" "That depends entirely on your intentions regarding humanity, Captain. We prefer peaceful coexistence with our neighbors. However, we're fully prepared to defend ourselves if necessary. And how exactly would you defend yourselves against superior technology? Captain Chen's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes suggested that she had been hoping he wouldn't ask that question. The same way we've always defended ourselves, Captain, through superior tactics, strategic thinking, and the willingness to escalate a conflict to whatever level necessary to ensure our survival. Escalation? If attacked, we don't simply defend ourselves, Captain. We eliminate the threat completely. Our military doctrine is based on the principle that any enemy capable of attacking us once will attempt to do so again unless permanently deterred. Vextar felt a chill run down his spine. You would destroy an entire civilization. If that civilization posed an existential threat to humanity, yes. We've learned that half measures in warfare tend to lead to longer, more destructive conflicts. When we fight to win decisively. The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. This small, fragile-looking human was calmly discussing the complete destruction of civilizations as if it were a standard military option. Captain, Vextar said carefully, surely you realize that your technology is inferior to ours. How could you possibly threaten a civilization like ours? Captain Vextar, with respect, you're thinking like someone who has always enjoyed technological superiority. When you've spent thousands of years fighting enemies with better weapons, you learn to think differently. Explain. We don't need to match your technology, Captain. We just need to make the cost of conquering us higher than the potential benefits. There are many ways to do that. Such as? Captain Chen was quiet for a long moment. Do you really want to know, Captain? Vexatar considered the question. Part of him did want to know, if only to satisfy his curiosity, but a larger part suspected that the answer would be deeply disturbing. Perhaps another time, he said finally. Wise choice, Captain Chen agreed. Now, shall we discuss more pleasant topics, such as establishing peaceful relations between our species? You would be willing to establish peaceful relations after this demonstration? Captain, this wasn't a demonstration of hostility. This was a demonstration of capability. There's a difference. We wanted to ensure that any future relationship between our species is based on mutual respect, rather than misconceptions about relative strength. Vextar studied the human captain's face. She was clearly intelligent, well-trained, and completely confident in her abilities. More importantly, she seemed genuinely interested in peaceful relations, despite having just proven that humanity was far more dangerous than they appeared. What would you propose? He asked. A simple arrangement, Captain. We'll share our space peacefully. We won't interfere with Zalathi activities in your territory, and you don't interfere with human activities in ours. If our species encounter each other in neutral space, we'll treat such meetings as opportunities for trade and cultural exchange rather than potential conflicts. And if conflicts do arise, then we'll resolve them through negotiation whenever possible. But both sides should understand that forcing a military solution would be expensive for everyone involved. Vextar looked around his bridge at his crew. They all wore the same expression he imagined was on his own face, the look of predators who had just discovered they weren't at the top of the food chain after all. Captain Chen, he said finally, I think I speak for the Zalathi Confederation when I say that we find your proposal reasonable. Excellent, she replied, with what appeared to be genuine relief. I'll transmit our formal first contact protocols and suggested diplomatic frameworks. I think you'll find them quite comprehensive. Captain, Science Officer Zalnex whispered urgently. I'm detecting multiple energy signatures approaching from the direction of human space. Vextar looked at Captain Chen, who smiled slightly. Ah, that would be our fast response squadron. 6 heavy cruisers and 2 battleships. They should arrive within the hour. You called for reinforcements? Standard protocol for first contact situations, Captain. We always ensure that any potential misunderstandings can be resolved quickly and decisively. 8 human warships were approaching, including vessels that Captain Chen had classified as battleships. If a light patrol vessel could hold its own against the Dominion's edge, what could actual human warships do? Captain Chen, Vextar said slowly, I believe the Zalathi Confederation would very much like to establish peaceful relations with humanity. I was hoping you'd say that, Captain. I think this could be the beginning of a very productive relationship. As the human reinforcements approached and the two captains began discussing the framework for peaceful coexistence, word of the encounter was already spreading throughout Zalathi space. Within hours, every ship captain in the Confederation fleet would know about the species that looked primitive but fought like demons, that turned warfare into science, and that could hold their own against superior technology through sheer tactical brilliance. The galaxy had a new apex predator, and its name was humanity. But perhaps more importantly, it was an apex predator that preferred cooperation to conquest, that would rather trade than fight, and that offered friendship to those wise enough to accept it. Captain Vextar looked at the approaching human fleet and realized that this first contact would indeed be remembered for a very long time. Not as the day the Zalathi discovered another primitive species to conquer, but as the day they learned that sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones that don't look dangerous at all. The Indomitable continued its patrol, its crew unaware that they had just redefined the balance of power in their sector of the galaxy. Captain Chen returned to her duties, satisfied that another potential conflict had been resolved through a show of strength rather than actual violence. And across known space, the word began to spread. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same again.
The old salvage ship Scavenger drifted through the empty space, its engines humming quietly. Inside the ship, Captain Jack Reed looked at the stars through the main window. His eyes were tired after 12 hours of finding nothing worth taking. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," said Mork, the blue-skinned alien who worked at the radar station. His 4 eyes blinked quickly, showing he was excited. Reed walked over and looked at the screen. "What is it?" "A ship, I think. But the signal is weak. It's just floating out there." Reed scratched his beard. The Galactic Alliance paid good money for salvage, especially now. The war with the Dominion had been going on for 20 years, and they needed all the parts they could get. "Let's check it out," Reed said. "Tom, take us closer." Tom, the only other human on the crew, nodded and changed their course. The rest of the crew, 6 aliens from different worlds, moved to their stations. They had done this many times before. As they got closer, Reed could see the ship through the front window. It was small for a warship, about 1/3 the size of a standard Alliance cruiser. Its dark hull was marked with burn spots and what looked like old battle damage. The design was old, very old. "That's a human ship," Reed said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. Zix, the tall green alien who handled communications, laughed. His voice sounded like rocks in a metal can. "Human garbage, you mean? That thing must be 50 years old at least." Reed ignored him. There was something familiar about the ship, something he had seen in history books when he was training at the academy. "Get me a closer look at the hull. I want to see if there's a name," Reed said. The Scavenger moved around the dead ship slowly. Its lights shined on the old metal, showing more damage. Then Reed saw it, faded letters on the side of the hull. Defiant. Reed's heart beat faster. It couldn't be. The Defiant was a legend, a ghost story told by old space sailors. The most advanced ship ever built by humans, lost during a secret mission 50 years ago. Everyone thought it had been destroyed. "Captain, are we taking this junk or not?" asked Mork. "It doesn't look worth much." Reed turned to his crew. They were all looking at him, waiting. None of them understood what they had just found. "We're taking it," Reed said firmly. "Prepare the tow cables." Zix made a sound like air escaping from a tire. That piece of junk. It's not worth the fuel it will take to drag it back. I'm the captain, Reed said, his voice hard as steel. And I say we're taking it. The crew knew better than to argue more. They began the process of attaching tow cables to the dead ship, complaining quietly among themselves. While they worked, Reed went to his private cabin and locked the door. His hand shook as he pulled up old files on his computer. Most information about the Defiant was classified, but Reed had always been interested in lost ships. He had collected what little public information existed. The Defiant had been humanity's greatest achievement, a prototype warship with technology years ahead of anything else. It had disappeared during its final test run. Some said it had suffered a catastrophic failure. Others said the Dominion had destroyed it to prevent humans from having such advanced technology. Now it was here, floating in empty space, waiting. Reed's computer beeped with a message from Tom. The tow cables were attached. They were ready to head back to Alliance Space Station 7. Set course for Station 7, Reed ordered when he returned to the bridge. And keep a close eye on our new friend back there. The journey would take 3 days. Reed spent most of that time watching the old ship through the cameras. The rest of the crew thought he was crazy, but Reed didn't care. He could feel that something was different about this salvage. On the second day, Mork called Reed to the radar station. "Captain, I'm picking up energy readings from the ship. Small ones, but they're there." "That's impossible," said Zix, looking over their shoulders. "That ship is dead. Has been for decades. The readings are real," Mork insisted. "Something inside that ship is still working." Reed stared at the screen, watching the small energy spikes. "Keep monitoring it. Let me know if anything changes." That night, as Reed slept, the emergency alarm blared through the ship. He jumped out of bed and ran to the bridge. "What's happening?" he demanded. Tom pointed at the screen showing the Defiant. "It's the tow ship, sir. It's doing something." The cameras showed a faint blue glow coming from deep inside the Defiant's hull. The energy readings were now 10 times stronger than before. "Are we in danger?" Reed asked. Mork checked his instruments. "I don't think so. The energy isn't directed at us. It's like the ship is waking up." The crew watched in silence as the glow grew brighter, then suddenly stopped. The energy readings dropped back to their previous low levels. "What just happened?" Zix asked, his voice smaller than usual. Reed shook his head. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." When they finally reached Space Station 7, a small crowd had gathered to see their salvage. Word had spread about the mysterious old ship they were bringing in. As the Defiant was secured in the station's largest dock, Reed was met by a tall man in an admiral's uniform. His gray hair and lined face showed his age, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "Captain Reed," the man said, extending his hand. "I'm Admiral Wilson. We need to talk about what you found." Reed shook his hand. "You know what this ship is, don't you?" Admiral Wilson looked around to make sure no one was listening. "Follow me to my office, Captain. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level." As they walked through the busy station, Reed looked back at the Defiant. In the bright lights of the dock, it looked even more damaged and outdated, just a piece of junk. But Reed knew better, and soon the rest of the galaxy would know too. Admiral Wilson closed the door to his office and turned to Reed with a serious face. The Defiant wasn't just another warship, Reed. It was humanity's most ambitious military project ever. What you found may just change the course of this war. Admiral Wilson's office was small but neat. Maps of the galaxy covered one wall, showing the areas controlled by the Alliance in blue and the Dominion in red. There was more red than blue. "Sit down, Captain Reed," Admiral Wilson said, pointing to a chair. Reed sat down, his eyes never leaving the Admiral's face. "What can you tell me about the Defiant?" Admiral Wilson pulled out an old folder from his desk. "This ship was built 50 years ago, when I was just a young officer. It was the most advanced warship humans had ever made. But on its final test mission, it vanished. Everyone thought it was destroyed. But it wasn't. Reed said, "No, and now you found it." The Admiral opened the folder and showed Reed some old pictures of the Defiant when it was new. Its hull had been shiny then, not covered in damage marks like now. "I'm putting together a team to check out the ship," Admiral Wilson said, "and I want you to lead it." Reed was surprised. "Me? Why not a military team?" "Because you found it. And because I trust you." Admiral Wilson looked straight at Reed. The Defiant wasn't just a warship. It was something more. Something that could have changed everything. The next morning, Reed met his new team at the dock where the Defiant was kept. There were 3 people waiting for him. "Captain Reed," said a tall woman with short brown hair. "I'm Lisa, engineering specialist. I've worked on ship systems for 15 years. "Tom," said a younger man with glasses, "military historian. I know everything about old ships, especially classified ones." The last member was a big alien with gray skin and small eyes. "Grax," he said in a deep voice. "Tech expert. I don't believe in ghost ships." Reed nodded to each of them. "Our job is to go inside the Defiant and find out what happened to it, and what might still be working inside." They put on space suits with built-in air supplies and entered the old ship through the main airlock. The inside was dark and cold. Their lights showed empty hallways with dust floating in the air. "The life support isn't working," Lisa said, checking her tools. "But the ship's structure is still sound. No big holes or breaks." They moved deeper into the ship, passing empty rooms and control stations. Everything looked old but not as damaged as the outside of the ship. "This doesn't make sense," Tom said. "The ship looks like it was in a big battle from the outside, but the inside is mostly fine." "Maybe the damage is fake," Grax said, "made to look like the ship was hurt badly so no one would want it." Reed thought about this. It was a clever idea. Make your most advanced ship look like useless junk so enemies would ignore it. They reached the bridge, the main control room of the ship. Everything was dark and quiet. "Let's see if we can get some power going," Lisa said. She opened a panel in the wall and started working with the wires inside. Tom walked around the bridge, touching the old controls. "It's amazing. This is like walking through history." Grax just stood by the door, looking unhappy to be there. Suddenly, a low hum filled the room. Small lights began to turn on around them. "I got some power working," Lisa said, surprised. "But I just connected a few basic systems. This is more power than there should be." The main screen at the front of the bridge lit up, showing a blue circle. Then a voice spoke, making them all jump. "Systems reactivating. Identity check running." "What was that?" Tom asked, his voice shaking. The blue circle pulsed as the voice spoke again. 4 life forms detected. Analyzing. 2 humans confirmed. Running Alliance database check. Reed stepped forward. "Who? What are you?" "I am ARIA. Advanced Recursive Intelligence Array, the central control system of the Defiant." The voice sounded almost human, but not quite. "Captain Jack Reed, your identity is confirmed. Alliance military personnel." Reed was shocked. "How do you know who I am?" "I have been monitoring communications since power levels allowed basic functions. I accessed Alliance personnel files." The blue circle expanded, showing data flowing around it. "I have been waiting for humans to find this vessel." Lisa moved closer to Reed. "It's an AI," she whispered, "but way more advanced than anything we have now, even 50 years later." Araya continued speaking. "The Defiant was not destroyed as recorded in Alliance history. It was hidden." More lights came on around the bridge. Screens lit up showing the status of the ship's systems. Most were still offline, but more were activating every minute. "Why was it hidden?" Reed asked. "The original crew discovered a critical flaw in the ship's main weapon system. If the Defiant had returned to Alliance space, The flaw could have been discovered by enemies. The crew made the decision to hide the ship until it could be safely recovered. Tom looked confused. But that was 50 years ago. What happened to the crew? The blue circle on the screen pulsed slower. The crew did not survive. Life support was damaged during the last battle. They had enough power to hide the ship and activate my preservation protocols, but not enough to save themselves. Reed felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air. They sacrificed themselves to save the ship. Correct, Araya said. They believed the Defiant was too important to fall into enemy hands. Grax, who had been quiet, finally spoke. If the ship is so special, what can it do? In answer, Araya began showing them schematics of the ship's systems. As they watched, their eyes grew wider. This can't be right, Lisa said. These technologies, some of them are still theoretical even now. Adaptive hull materials, quantum propulsion, energy shields that learn from attacks. Some systems remain damaged, Araya said. But with proper repairs, the Defiant can be fully operational again. Reed thought about what this meant. In the middle of a losing war, they had just found the most advanced warship ever built by humans. A ship that might change everything. We need to tell Admiral Wilson right away, Reed said. But as they turned to leave the bridge, Araya spoke again. Warning. New data incoming from long-range sensors. Alliance network has been compromised. Use caution when communicating. Reed stopped. What do you mean, compromised? There are communication patterns consistent with enemy infiltration. The Defiant's return may have been noticed by hostile forces within the Alliance. The 4 team members looked at each other. What had started as a simple exploration mission had just become much more complicated. We need to be careful who we tell about this, Reed said quietly, until we know who we can trust. As they left the bridge, none of them noticed the small camera in the hallway watching them go, or the figure in another part of the station who was watching the camera feed, eyes narrowed with interest and worry. News about the strange old ship spread quickly through Space Station 7. By morning, crowds of people gathered near the docking bay, trying to get a look at the Defiant. Station security had to put up barriers to keep them away. Reed and his team met in a small room near the dock. They had agreed not to tell anyone about Araya or the ship's true capabilities until they spoke with Admiral Wilson. The Admiral is coming at noon, Reed told them. Until then, we keep everything we learn to ourselves. Lisa was looking at copies of the ship's schematics that Araya had let them take. I still can't believe some of this technology. It's like finding out humans had smartphones 100 years before they were invented. Tom nodded. The Defiant was decades ahead of its time, maybe even ahead of our time now. If this ship is so special, why did no one look for it harder when it disappeared? Grax asked, his small eyes narrowed. Before anyone could answer, the door opened. A tall man in a general's uniform walked in, followed by 4 soldiers. The team stood up quickly. General Barnes, Reed said, surprised. We weren't expecting you. General Barnes had a hard face with cold eyes. He was one of the highest-ranking officers in the Alliance military. Captain Reed, the general said without smiling. I came as soon as I heard about your discovery. He looked at the papers on the table. I see you've been busy. Reed carefully moved to cover the schematics. We're preparing our report for Admiral Wilson. The Admiral won't be coming, General Barnes said. I'm taking command of this operation. The Defiant is now under my authority. Reed felt something was wrong. With all respect, sir, Admiral Wilson specifically assigned us to this project. Plans change, Captain. The general turned to his soldiers. Secure the ship. No one enters without my permission. As the soldiers left, General Barnes looked at Reed's team. You will turn over all data you've collected and report to me for debriefing in 1 hour. After the general left, the team looked at each other with worry. I don't like this, Lisa said. Why would he take over so suddenly? Reed remembered Araya's warning about the Alliance network being compromised. We need to talk to Admiral Wilson directly. Tom, try to find him. Grax, keep an eye on what's happening at the dock. Lisa, you and I are going back to the Defiant. But the general said. Lisa started. I know what he said, Reed cut in. But something isn't right. We need to talk to ARIA again. Getting back to the ship wasn't easy. Soldiers now guarded every entrance. But Reed knew the station well and found a maintenance access point they could use to reach the Defiant without being seen. Once inside the ship, they went straight to the bridge. The lights were dim, but ARIA's blue circle appeared as soon as they entered. Captain Reed. Engineer Lisa. You have returned sooner than expected, ARIA said. We have a problem. Reed explained about General Barnes taking over. Why would he do that? What's so important about this ship that he would push out Admiral Wilson? ARIA was quiet for a moment. Then the main screen showed a star map. I have accessed more of my memory banks. The Defiant was not built just as an advanced warship. It was built to counter a specific threat. The map zoomed in on a distant part of space. 50 years ago, humanity encountered a race of synthetic beings called the Harvesters. They attacked 3 human colonies before disappearing. I've never heard of them, Lisa said. All records were classified. The public was told the colonies were destroyed by natural disasters. ARIA showed images of strange ships with smooth, dark surfaces. The Harvesters were unlike any known species. They did not communicate. They did not negotiate. They simply took what they wanted. Reed shook his head. What does this have to do with General Barnes? The Defiant was designed specifically to fight the Harvesters. Its weapons and defenses were created to counter their technology. Another image appeared on the screen, what looked like a massive energy wave. The main weapon was called the Harmony Array. It was the only thing that ever stopped a Harvester ship. Lisa looked closely at the schematics. This isn't a normal weapon. It doesn't destroy ships. It disrupts some kind of frequency. Correct? ARIA said. The Harvesters operate on a specific quantum frequency for communication and power. The Harmony Array disrupts that frequency, shutting down their ships without destroying them. Reed was starting to understand. So the Defiant is the only defense against these Harvesters. But why would that matter now, 50 years later? ARIA's blue circle pulsed faster, because they are returning. My long-range sensors have detected a large fleet approaching Alliance space. They will arrive in approximately 7 days. Lisa's face went pale. A fleet? How big? At least 300 vessels, much larger than the force encountered 50 years ago. Reed felt cold all over. Does the Alliance know about this? Negative. The Harvesters use advanced stealth technology. Standard Alliance sensors cannot detect them until they are very close. We have to warn everyone, Lisa said. Reed nodded, but then stopped. Wait, if the Harvesters are coming back, why would General Barnes try to take control of the ship? Shouldn't he want us to prepare it as quickly as possible? ARIA displayed new information on the screen. I have been analyzing Alliance communication patterns. General Barnes has had multiple encrypted communications with unknown sources outside Alliance space. His behavior suggests he may be compromised. A traitor, Lisa whispered. Working for who? The Dominion. That is the most probable explanation, ARIA said. If the Dominion learned about the returning Harvester threat, they might seek to control the Defiant for their own protection. Just then, Reed's communication device beeped. It was Tom. Reed, we have a problem. Admiral Wilson is gone. His office says he was called away suddenly 2 hours ago. And Grax just messaged me. They're preparing to move the Defiant to a military dock. Reed looked at the bridge around them. They're trying to take the ship. Captain Reed, ARIA said, based on available data, I believe General Barnes intends to use the Defiant to negotiate with the Dominion. If he controls the only weapon effective against the Harvesters, he would have significant leverage, while the Alliance is destroyed by the Harvesters. Lisa added, her voice angry. Reed made a quick decision. ARIA, Can you lock down the ship? Prevent anyone from moving it? Affirmative. I can seal all access points and disable docking clamps. Do it, Reed said. And then we need to find a way to contact Admiral Wilson. He's the only one with enough authority to stop Barnes. Alarms began to sound throughout the ship as AIA locked down all systems. Reed and Lisa looked at each other, knowing they had just crossed a line. They were now acting against direct orders from a general. We may have just become traitors, Lisa said quietly. Reed nodded. Maybe. But sometimes being loyal to your people means disobeying orders. Outside the ship, they could hear shouting as Barnes soldiers realized what was happening. The Defiant, once thought to be just a piece of junk, had become the most valuable ship in the galaxy, and the race to control it had just begun. Alarms blared throughout Space Station 7. Red lights flashed in every hallway. Over the station's speakers, a voice kept repeating, "Security alert in Dock Section 12. All non-essential personnel clear the area." Inside the Defiant, Reed and Lisa watched through the ship's cameras as soldiers surrounded the vessel. "We can't stay here forever," Lisa said. "Eventually they'll find a way to break in." Reed nodded. "We need to find Admiral Wilson and get proof of what Barnes is doing." The bridge door opened, and Tom ran in, out of breath. Made it. Just in time. He leaned against a wall. "They're sealing all access points to the dock." "How did you get in?" Lisa asked. "Grax." Tom smiled. "He created a distraction. Then I used the same maintenance tunnel you did." Reed was surprised. "Grax helped you." "I thought he didn't believe in any of this. He changed his mind after seeing Barnes soldiers push people around." Tom looked at the screens showing the activity outside. "What's the plan now?" Before Reed could answer, Ariah spoke. "Captain Reed, I have completed a full systems check. The Defiant's main engines are operational. The Harmony array is damaged, but can be repaired." Lisa looked surprised. "Wait, are you saying we can actually fly this ship?" "Affirmative. This vessel is space-worthy." Reed, Lisa, and Tom looked at each other as they realized what this meant. "We could leave the station," Tom said quietly. Reed walked around the bridge, thinking. "If we stay, Barnes will take the ship. If we go—" He didn't finish the sentence. They all knew what it would mean to steal a military vessel. They would be labeled as traitors, hunted by the Alliance. "Captain," Ariah said, "I have detected a security breach. Someone is attempting to access my systems remotely." "Barnes," Reed muttered. "How long can you keep them out?" "Approximately 1 hour. After that, I cannot guarantee control of ship systems." Reed made his decision. "Tom, find Grax. Tell him what's happening and give him a choice. He can come with us or stay behind." "Come with us." "Where are we going?" Tom asked. "We're taking the Defiant," Reed said. "It's the only way to keep it from Barnes and warn the Alliance about the harvesters." Lisa looked worried but nodded. "I'll start checking the engine systems." As they worked to prepare the ship, Reed contacted Admiral Wilson through a secure channel that ARIA helped set up. It took time, but finally, the Admiral's face appeared on a small screen. "Reed, what's going on?" Admiral Wilson looked tired and confused. "I was ordered to report to headquarters without explanation." "Sir, General Barnes has taken control of the Defiant. We have reason to believe he's working with the Dominion." Reed quickly explained about the harvesters and what ARIA had discovered. The Admiral's face grew serious. "This is worse than I feared. Barnes has too many powerful friends for me to stop him officially." He thought for a moment. "I need proof of his treachery. Without it, my hands are tied." "We'll get you proof," Reed promised. "But we need time." "Do what you have to do, Captain. I'll help when I can." The Admiral's image disappeared as the communication ended. Tom returned with Grax. The big alien looked uncomfortable. "I still think this is crazy," Grax said. "But I'm in. Nobody takes over my station and pushes people around." Good, Reed said. We need all the help we can get. For the next hour, they worked frantically to prepare the ship. Lisa focused on the engines, while Grax helped secure the ship's systems against Barnes hackers. Tom discovered something interesting while exploring the ship's databanks. "Captain, you need to see this," Tom called from a small room near the bridge. The walls were covered with screens showing complex diagrams. "It's the complete schematics for the Harmony Array." Reed looked at the diagrams. "Can you understand any of this?" "Some of it," Tom said. "The array doesn't work like a normal weapon. It doesn't shoot anything or create explosions. It creates a field that disrupts the specific frequency the harvesters use." Lisa joined them, wiping her hands on a cloth. "Like how a certain sound can break glass if it's the right frequency." "Exactly," Tom said. "And I think I found the flaw that the original crew discovered." He pointed to a section of the diagram. "This control system isn't properly shielded. If it overheats during use, the entire array could fail. Can we fix it?" Reed asked. Lisa studied the diagrams. "Maybe, with the right parts and time." "We don't have much time," Reed said as the ship shook slightly. "What was that?" They ran back to the bridge. On the screens, they could see cutting tools being used on one of the outer doors. "They're breaking in," Grax said. "SCI-FI, how long until they get through?" Reed asked. "At current rate, outer hull breach in 15 minutes." Reed looked at his team. They all knew what had to be done. "Everyone to your stations," he ordered. "Lisa, give me everything the engines have. Grax, keep their hackers out of our systems for as long as possible. Tom, keep working on that array schematic. We might need it soon." Reed sat in the captain's chair. "SCI-FI, disengage all docking clamps and prepare for emergency departure." "Warning," SCI-FI said. "Emergency departure will cause damage to the station dock. Potential casualties." Reed hadn't thought of that. He couldn't risk hurting innocent people. "Wait," Lisa said. "The ship has stealth technology, right? Could we use that to mask our engine signature? Make a quiet exit?" "Possible," SCI-FI replied. "But it will require precise timing and reduced power." "Do it," Reed said. The next 10 minutes were tense. The ship slowly, quietly disconnected from the station's docking clamps. The cutting tools kept working on the outer door, but the soldiers didn't realize the ship was already breaking free. "All clamps disengage," SCI-FI announced. "Ready for departure." Reed took a deep breath. "Take us out." Slowly. The Defiant moved silently away from the station, its stealth systems making it nearly invisible to sensors. By the time Barnes' soldiers broke through the outer door, the ship was already heading into open space. "We did it," Tom said, almost not believing it. But their victory was short-lived. Station alarms blared, and soon small military ships launched in pursuit. "They've spotted us," Grax said from his station. Reed gripped the arms of his chair. "SCI-FI, can we outrun them?" "Affirmative. The Defiant's quantum drive is significantly faster than standard Alliance engines. Then let's show them what this piece of junk can really do." The ship's engines roared to life, pushing them all back in their seats. The pursuing ships quickly fell behind, becoming small dots on their screens. They had escaped for now, but Reed knew this was just the beginning. They were alone in a stolen military vessel, with both the Alliance and General Barnes hunting them. And somewhere out there, the Harvester fleet was approaching. As the stars streaked by outside, Reed wondered if they had made the right choice. But looking at his determined crew, he knew they had no other option. Sometimes the right path was also the hardest one. For 3 days, the Defiant stayed hidden in a small asteroid field at the edge of Alliance space. The team worked day and night, repairing systems and studying the Harmony Array. They took turns sleeping in the crew quarters, which still held personal items from the original crew who had died 50 years ago. Reed stood on the bridge, looking at the star map. SCI-FI had marked the path of the approaching Harvester fleet with a red line. 2 more days, Reed said quietly. Then they'll reach the first Alliance outpost. Lisa walked onto the bridge, looking tired but determined. We've fixed most of the damage to the Harmony array. The control system is now properly shielded. Will it work? Reed asked. In theory, yes, but we can't test it without activating it. And we should save that for the harvesters. Tom and Grax joined them, bringing food from the ship's supplies. Any word from Admiral Wilson? Tom asked as he handed out meal packs. Reed shook his head. Nothing yet. General Barnes has declared us traitors. There's a bounty on our heads. The Alliance thinks we stole the ship for the Dominion. Great, Grax said. So we're trying to save people who want to arrest us. They don't know the truth, Reed said. We need to show them. Aroya's blue circle appeared on the main screen. Captain Reed, I have intercepted an encrypted transmission from General Barnes. He is communicating with a Dominion vessel. Can you decode it? Reed asked. Partial decoding possible. Araya played the message. Barnes' voice was broken up, but they could hear enough. Fleet approaching. Deal is control of the Harmony technology. Safe passage for important Alliance officials only. He's selling out the Alliance, Tom said, his voice angry. Offering the Dominion the Harmony technology in exchange for protecting himself and his friends from the harvesters. Reed's face hardened. Araya, record this message and prepare to broadcast it on all Alliance frequencies. What are you planning? Lisa asked. We're going to show everyone what Barnes is doing. And then we're going to stop the harvesters. Reed turned to his team. But first, we need to get closer to Alliance space. The Defiant left its hiding place, moving carefully to avoid detection. They approached the border outpost that would be the first in the harvester's path. This is where we make our stand, Reed told his team. Araya, broadcast Barnes' message to all Alliance channels, then send our location to Admiral Wilson through the secure channel. Broadcasting now, Araya said. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the communication system lit up with incoming messages. Alliance ships are responding, Grax said from his station. They're asking for confirmation of the Barnes recording. Reed took a deep breath and opened a channel to respond. This is Captain Jack Reed of the Defiant. Everything we've sent is true. A hostile fleet called the Harvesters is approaching Alliance space. General Barnes has betrayed us all. We need every available ship at these coordinates immediately. More messages came in, some doubtful, others supportive. Then a familiar voice spoke. Reed, this is Admiral Wilson. I received your location. I have 3 ships with me, and more are coming. Hold your position. Relief washed over Reed's face. Someone had believed them. Within hours, a small Alliance fleet had gathered near the Defiant. Admiral Wilson's ship docked with them, and he came aboard with a security team. It's good to see you, Captain, the Admiral said, shaking Reed's hand. Your evidence against Barnes was enough to convince the High Command. He's been arrested. What about the harvesters? Reed asked. We have 20 ships here now, with 10 more on the way. The Admiral looked around the bridge of the Defiant. But I'll be honest, I don't know if it will be enough. It will have to be, Reed said. Araya, how long until the harvester fleet arrives? 6 hours, 14 minutes. Admiral Wilson nodded. Then we have work to do. The next few hours were a blur of activity. The Alliance ships formed a defensive line with the Defiant in the center. Reed and his team explained what they knew about the harvesters and the Harmony array to the other ship captains. Remember, Reed told them during the final briefing, your weapons might not be effective against their shields. The Defiant will try to disrupt their systems with the Harmony array. When that happens, target their power cores. As the time for the harvesters' arrival approached, Reed returned to the Defiant's bridge. His team was at their stations, ready for battle. I want to thank you all, Reed said. You risked everything to do what was right. Tom smiled. That's what humans do, isn't it? Stand up for each other when it matters. Not just humans, Grax said, surprising them. Some of us aliens can do the right thing too. Before Reed could respond, SCI-FI spoke. Alert. Multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Harvester fleet detected. On the main screen, they saw them. Hundreds of dark, smooth ships moving in perfect formation. They were unlike any ships Reed had ever seen, more like giant black teardrops than normal vessels. All ships, battle stations. Admiral Wilson's voice came over the communication system. The Alliance ships opened fire as the harvesters approached. Energy beams and missiles struck the black ships, but seemed to do nothing. Their shields are holding, Lisa reported. Our weapons aren't getting through. Then the harvesters returned fire. Green energy beams cut through space, slicing into 2 Alliance ships, which exploded instantly. We need to use the array now, Reed said. Is it ready? Lisa nodded. As ready as it will ever be. SCI-FI, power up the Harmony array. Target the center of their fleet. The lights on the Defiant dimmed as power was redirected to the main weapon. A low hum filled the bridge, growing louder. Harmony array at full power, SCI-FI announced. Firing. There was no visible beam, no explosion. Instead, a wave of energy pulsed outward from the Defiant, rippling through space like water. When it reached the harvester ships, something strange happened. The black ships stopped moving. Their green weapons went dark. They began to drift aimlessly. It worked, Tom shouted. Their systems are disrupted. All ships, target the harvesters now, Reed ordered. The Alliance fleet opened fire again. This time, their weapons broke through, destroying one harvester ship after another. The battle turned in their favor. But then, warning lights flashed on Lisa's console. The array is overheating. The shield isn't holding. Shut it down, Reed ordered. I can't. The controls aren't responding. The bridge shook as energy surged through the ship. Reed gripped his chair as the lights flickered. SCI-FI, can you stop it? Attempting emergency shutdown. SCI-FI's blue circle pulsed rapidly. Warning. Harmony array approaching critical failure. In that moment, Reed knew what he had to do. Everyone to the escape pods. Now, what about you? Lisa asked. I'll stay and try to keep the array working as long as possible. The harvesters are still a threat. Before they could argue, Reed ordered SCI-FI to lock down the bridge. His team was escorted to escape pods by Admiral Wilson's security officers. Alone on the bridge, Reed worked frantically to keep the array operating. The ship shook around him as systems failed one by one. SCI-FI, status of the harvester fleet. 78% neutralized. Alliance forces continuing to engage. Reed nodded. It would have to be enough. As the array began its final failure, Reed looked out at the stars one last time. He thought about how everyone had called the Defiant a piece of junk when he first found it. Now it had saved them all. The console in front of him exploded in sparks. The ship lurched violently. SCI-FI, send a message to my team. Tell them. Reed paused. Tell them it was an honor. Message sent, Captain Reed. As systems failed around him, Reed smiled. The piece of junk had turned out to be the most advanced warship ever built after all. And it had done exactly what it was designed to do. 1 month later, a ceremony was held on Earth. Admiral Wilson stood before a crowd, speaking about heroism and sacrifice. Behind him was a large monument, a perfect replica of the Defiant. Lisa, Tom, and Grax stood in the front row, wearing new Alliance uniforms with special insignia, the silhouette of the Defiant against a field of stars. Captain Jack Reed gave his life to save us all, Admiral Wilson said. He showed us that sometimes the most valuable things don't look impressive from the outside. The Defiant wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of human ingenuity and courage. As the ceremony ended, a fleet of new ships flew overhead. Each one had the same basic design as the Defiant, simple, unassuming from the outside, but carrying the same advanced technology within. The Alliance had learned an important lesson. Never judge a ship by its hull.